Why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail, then hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play a roulette with each step. I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bets. Cause we know who we at, we know we top tier. Cause all the hate that you bring, we know it stops here. I'm taking off like a rocket here and stopping here. It's strange how they cannot see the future, but see profit here. Wait up, we gon' always win. I can't take no loss. My team hold no L's, no. Aiming for the top, can't make it by myself.
Welcome to a Friday show. Brett breaks things here on Friday. And yeah, it was a good week. I mean, it's a terrible week, but we felt good about the shows we did covering it, and we are still in the shutdown. Hope you went and took the over. Because every day I come back here and tell you we're still in a shutdown show is a day you're closer to cashing out. Is a day that the deal makers, the nonpartisan deal makers in the Senate have failed to make a deal. And there is no deal yet. But there are developments, and we will get to that. We will get to the developments in the shutdown right now. And as I've detailed, we are facing the wrath of Russ Vought. But there is a fight to be had. Not everybody's just laying down. And we will get to that. But I'm going to open with a story that we covered. And at the time we covered it, there was a lot of international outrage, pushback, questions for this administration when they blew up a boat with 17 Venezuelans on it that was suspected of carrying drugs. They said they had, surveillance, audio surveillance, confirming that they were Venezuelan drug dealers. Blew them up. Done. Just blew them up. And at the time that they blew the second boat up, that boat was turning around, had 3 people on it, turning around, kind of moving around Venezuela a little bit, not even actually going at the United States yet. They blew that one up too. They said they had intelligence. 2 boats blown up just off the coast of Venezuela. And the international community wanted answers. Venezuela, not happy, still not. And things are developing. I apologize. So it has come to a head in terms of the administration having to explain their actions. They're facing a lot of pressure. They're not just facing pressure from the international community, lawyers, They're facing pressure from congressmen, Democratic and Republican. A lot of different people want answers here. Some people are willing to toe the line, of course. So the administration has released a congressional notice. This was in response to them being completely cut out of the process. Okay? There was a meeting with the Senate Armed Service Committee on Wednesday, and we'll get into that meeting, what they were saying and what they're still saying. And that meeting spurned this notice to Congress. Okay? And this notice, it explains their rationale for the first bombings, and it details possibly what they'll be doing going forward. And it is chilling. And we've gone over some stories here, and a few of them I've told you these are the ones. These are the ones we have to pay attention to, because these are the ones that are the true, most clear and present threat to democracy. 2 of them notably was the Lisa Cook firing, and will SCOTUS allow Trump to, without cause, get rid of somebody on the Fed? That will have devastating effects on our economy, devastating effects on Supreme Court precedent, and what our government looks like from top to bottom going forward. Is anybody immune from these baseless, void of rationale firings from Trump? Political retribution. Sometimes it's not even political. Sometimes with E.J. Antony, I hired you to do a job. We fired McIntarfer. I hired you to do a job. Get me better jobs reports. He couldn't do it because he didn't have the numbers to support that, and he got fired. That wasn't even political. That was just, you're fired. I wanted trumped up numbers. You're fired. So firings all over the place. That was one story. Not only will it devastate precedent, but it will devastate our economy if we are no longer seen independent in the Fed. If it's a state-run Fed and numbers come out that Donald Trump likes, favorable to his administration, our economy's done. We're a third world nation then. The other one was what's going on at the FCC. The stuff going on at the FCC is pivotal. And I told you Kimmel and what Disney decides to do with the Kimmel situation was going to be a clear sign of whether they're in the fight or they're going to capitulate. And they decided to fight. They brought him back. That was a great W. It shows us at least one major entity that Americans love and are behind is willing to fight. That was great. But what will the FCC do going forward? Brendan Carr, what will he do going forward? Threatening to pull media licenses. That was another one. First Amendment on the line. Direct assault. And I'm going to get into another one of those stories. I'm sorry, but this is bigger than they're letting on. It's not gaining as much traction as it should be. Because in this notice to Congress, explaining their actions and detailing what they may do going forward, it lays out a very, very scary dystopian future for America. Possibly. Hopefully not. But man, this is much bigger than you think it may be. At least I perceive it to be. Much bigger than the mainstream media is treating it as. Now, the notice, all right, it explains what happened with the bombings and taking out the boats. Trump is deeming this as an active armed conflict, okay? And in an armed conflict, as defined by international law, a country can lawfully kill enemy fighters even when they pose no threat, detain them indefinitely without trials, and prosecute them in military courts. They're not going with option B and C there. They are just killing people. Just killing people. Now, some people there's some quotes here that I want you to hear how some people in the military community and legal community are seeing this. One is Jeffrey Korn, a retired judge advocate general lawyer. He said drug cartels were not engaged in hostilities, which is the standard when there's an armed conflict for legal purposes. They were not engaged in active hostilities against the United States because selling a dangerous product is different from an armed attack. But that's not what Trump's team is arguing. Okay? Now he notes it is illegal for the military to deliberately target civilians who are not directly participating in hostilities, even suspected criminals. He called the president's move an abuse and a major crossing of the legal line. What does the White House have to say? Anna Kelly, one of those charming White House spokespeople, she said, the president acted in line with the law of armed conflict to protect our country from those trying to bring deadly poisons to our shores. And he is delivering on his promise to take on the cartels and eliminate these national security threats from murdering more Americans. Okay? He's calling it not only an armed conflict, but in defense, directed defense from an attack by these cartels. Okay? He's saying the administration is saying the boats from Venezuela are responsible for a surge of drug overdoses and fentanyl. But all analysts say not only are there actually no cartels in Venezuela, really, they're much more like traffickers. There's no real cartels. The cartels, they're in Mexico. The cartels aren't really in Venezuela. They're more traffickers, pushers. Get the product, bring it somewhere else. So and we're going to poke holes in a lot of what they're saying. So their assertion even that Tren de Aragua is a cartel is false. It's false. They're traffickers. It's not a real cartel. Okay? He's saying that these strikes on the boats are part of a sustained active conflict. Okay? A sustained active conflict. He's calling them non-state armed groups. That's what he's calling them. Non-international armed groups, and he's calling this a non-international armed conflict. There's precedent for this. And this is where they're wrong again. The precedent is in 2001 with our war with Al-Qaeda, okay? They were also a non-state armed group. They had a military operation, a terrorist military operation spanning across multiple countries. It was a non-international armed conflict with Al-Qaeda. And the Supreme Court backed up all of Bush's military actions against Al-Qaeda. They said that, one, Al-Qaeda actually attacked us with getting planes and targeting Americans and killing them. And two, Bush went through Congress like he was supposed to. He got the okay from the Supreme Court and he got the okay from Congress. Trump is lacking all of this. All of this. Okay? He's saying, and this is going to start to really form. He's saying any drug dealers associated with a cartel is an armed combatant, and that we, under war articles, can gun them down on sight. There are people in the United States called gangs, and some of these gangs are connected with cartels in Mexico. Do you see where I'm getting here? See where I'm getting at? Is it starting to become clear? This is the formation of the first unbelievable scenario that could be playing out. Could be playing out. The bombing of those boats in Venezuela, that was a test case. It was a warm-up. It was a warm-up. Some people are saying things. I want to get to some more quotes. It's important in the context of what I'm starting to lay out in front of you. It's important to hear what these people are saying. Senator Jack Reed, who is a top Democrat in that Armed Services Committee that I'm going to get into in just a little bit, that spurned this, he said, Mr. Trump deciding that he can wage secret wars against anyone he calls an enemy. He's offering no credible legal justification, evidence, or intelligence for the strikes. Drug cartels are despicable and must be dealt with by law enforcement. But now, by the president's own words, the U.S. military is engaged in armed conflict with undefined enemies he has unilaterally labeled unlawful combatants. And he has deployed thousands of troops, ships, and aircrafts against them. Yet he has refused to inform Congress. What did Sean Parnell, the chief Pentagon spokesman, say? And we're going to hear from him again. He said the Defense Department was successfully prosecuting this critical mission in compliance with both domestic and international law, and in accordance with the law of armed conflict. The department has provided the required notification to Congress. That's this note that we're getting into here. So, are you starting to see a problem? If we're at actual war with drug cartels, anybody connected with those cartels are non-state combatants. And we are in a non-international conflict with them actively. And any killing of these people without seizure, restraining them, searching them, investigating them, any killing of these people is defense of the American people's safety in war. He's testing it off the coast of Venezuela. That's the test. That test is twofold. One, let's get the legal battle rolling for when we move this war elsewhere. And two, the even scarier scenario, the consequences to Venezuela.
It's time for a quick break, then we break some more. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. Now back to Brett Breaks Things, smashing spin, silencing the noise, and keeping it all facts, no fluff.
Okay. So, I hate to be so dramatic, but we're going to tie this together when I get through this. And I'm just going to get really hyperbolic. I'm going to become a panican, Scott. Yeah. I'm going to do that. I'm going to be a panican. I'm going to do that. That stupid term that we've learned earlier this year. I'm going to do that because in my heart, I truly feel that this is all a very concerted effort. A very, very concerted effort. We're going to continue. This is all a big plan playing out, and I have my serious doubts that Trump had any part of this, actually. This is way too concerted. It's way too thought out. If the dominoes fall just right, the effects are going to be way too beneficial to a Trump regime. So, people wanted answers. And that memo, that note to Congress, that was the answers they were willing to give. Saying, the boats we blew up, those were non-state armed combatants we're at war with, and we can kill them on sight. And furthermore, we are at war with all cartels. We are at war with all cartels, and anybody involved in a cartel can be shot on sight. People wanted answers to what was happening. The reason they gave that note to Congress was because of pressure that was put on them during this Wednesday Armed Service Committee briefing. It was held by the Pentagon General Counsel, the top lawyer for the Pentagon named Earl Matthews. And he sat down with the Armed Service Committee and he explained their actions. And he repeatedly referred to Trump's designation of the Latin American drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. FTOs, foreign terrorist organizations, which he said granted the Defense Department unilateral authority to use military force against them. And he refused to even come to that meeting with any type of written or legal justification. Just what he says goes. And this is in front of the Armed Services Committee. And they pushed back in that meeting. So he threw Congress this bone. All right? Somebody said, look, you gotta give them something. You got to give them something. And so he gave him that bone, what I just described to you, that note to Congress. That's the transparency they're willing to offer. 2 weeks after the fact, we'll hit you with an explanation. We're not going to come asking for permission to wage war on cartels. If you want to call it a war, you have to get congressional approval. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to unilaterally kill these people. I've declared the war already. I went around you already. Now I'm just going to kill them. Here's your little note. Here's your note. Coming out of that meeting, there were Republicans and Democrats who were not happy. Tim Kaine, we've heard from him lately, Virginia Democrat. He said the bipartisan group there was confused and concerned. Bipartisan. Republicans and Democrats were very confused and very concerned with their legal explanation for what they had done. He said, I was there and I'm not satisfied. And it's important to note that Kaine and Schiff, they have introduced a War Powers Act, right, to reassert congressional control over military action because of what Trump did in the Caribbean. Because of what Trump did blowing up these two boats. He and Schiff got together and they immediately put together this War Powers Act. He's not satisfied with the explanation he got out of Earl Matthews. He's not satisfied. I told you about Jack Reed criticizing Trump and the administration for offering no credible legal justification. He said, quote, every American should be alarmed that their president has decided he can wage a secret war on anyone he calls an enemy. Now, apparently, Sean Parnell, the Pentagon spokesman, and a few Republicans in that committee, they were very worried about leaking of this meeting. They were very worried about reporting, the kind that I'm referencing right now out of the Wall Street Journal. They were very fired up about it. They had tried to get out in front of it, even though I'm not really sure what they're referring to in these comments. But we'll hear from him. Parnell first said, he said the briefing was classified. Unauthorized disclosure of the information provided Wednesday would reasonably be expected to cause exceptionally grave damage to national security. Nobody said what was discussed in the meeting. We're referring to the reporting about this note they gave to Congress. And we're just telling you, what the lawmakers that went to this meeting said coming out of it. There wasn't even like a whistleblower report he's pointing to. I don't know why he's so fired up. Maybe he sees something coming down the pike. So does Dave Vasquez. He's a majority leader in this committee, in the Armed Service Committee. He's a majority leader, a Republican. He said it's incredibly alarming to suggest that the substance of that briefing is being discussed given the security clearance required to attend it. The Senate Armed Service Committee majority treats this leak to the press as a potentially serious breach of security. Are they ramping up to attack the Wall Street Journal? I mean, this is pretty superficial reporting here. They didn't really there was nowhere for them to dig. They're simply taking quotes of Armed Service Committee members as they come out, and they're detailing what's in this note that was given to Congress. What are they referring to? Why are they so heavy-handed on this point right now? I hope it's not foreshadowing something. Considering his lawsuits against 60 Minutes and the New York Times, and then again in the New York Times, I hope this isn't foreshadowing something. Rand Paul, he's one Republican. He was very critical. He was very critical. We played the tapes. Sometimes Rand says the right things, which makes him the sneakiest little snake in the grass. Sometimes he says the right things. He was critical of the bombings. But what are most Republicans saying? They're getting in line. They're towing the line. Of course they are. Of course they are. Quote, President Trump has every right under Article 2 of the Constitution to wage war against those who are waging war on the United States. That was Tom Cotton. He's saying those guys on the boats that were hauling drugs off the coast of Venezuela were waging war on the United States. When most analysts, most criminal analysts and people who look into what's happening with the cartels and the drug trade in the region, they're telling you that less than 25% of drugs leaving Venezuela ever even make it to the United States. If you want to actually put a dent in this, you got to check the Mexican border and even the Pacific Ocean route, because that's where a lot of the fentanyl's coming, into the West Coast. So they're not even sure what they're talking about with Trenda Aragua waging war on the United States. Joni Ernst, she approved of the administration's military action. I fully support the president. I fully support him in getting rid of the scourge of drugs at home by taking the fight to the narco-terrorists. If these traffickers continue to smuggle drugs, they will be met by a swift and fierce reaction. Not all lawyers are as convinced. Nope. Military lawyers, Pentagon officials, Pentagon lawyers, they are very concerned, and they have been raising their concerns. There's one lawyer who was a retired Navy judge. Now he's a lawyer at Georgetown University, Todd Huntley. He said using the Foreign Terrorist Order, or FTO designation, as justification for the strikes is not a sound legal argument. Declaring an organization as an FTO does not bring with it any additional authority to use force against those organizations. Okay? He's saying, and this is yet another area where their justification is falling short. He's saying the FTO designation, that's not used to blow people out of the water and unilaterally kill people. That's generally used as a legal tool against people who are sympathetic to actual FTOs, who fund them or facilitate their organization in any way. And when you want to go after them legally, that's something you attack them with. Hey, you're funding an FTO and we can show you how. That's what the designation's primarily used for. It's not used to blow up Venezuelans off the coast of Venezuela. But that's what it used to be used for. Not anymore, Todd. Now, the FTO designation, Trump has reappropriated it. Now it's used to blow people up unilaterally. When we come back, it looks like I might go long today, Scotty. I might go long today. It's Friday. I might go long because I want to get to this stuff. When I come back, I'm going to get to the other half of this extremely scary scenario, and I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to get hyperbolic, and I'm going to try to scare you. Halloween is coming, and I'm going to give you the biggest scare of the entire season. Don't even bother going to Fright Nights over at the fairgrounds, even though I have to go. Don't bother. I'm going to scare the crap out of you at the end of this story. And I would love to discard some of the stuff I'm going to say because in my heart I don't believe it or don't think it could come to fruition, but I can't do that because that's not how I truly feel. The ways in which the Trump administration is going to use these events scares the hell out of me.
We'll be back to break it all down. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. Brett Breaks Things. Fighting for America, one mic drop at a time.
All right. Here we go. Trump has said there was 300 million deaths due to overdoses. That's what he said. But since that, and as hilarious as that was, since that he's walked it back and he said, I meant 300,000. And he is sticking to that. Trump is saying 300,000 Americans a year die from drug overdoses. And this is a war. Well, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported 87,000 overdoses in 2024. And that was a 27% decline from the previous year. That's why he's doing this. Or so they're telling you. This is their reason. This is their claims. These cartels are terrorist organizations, non-state combatants, and they are attacking the American public at unprecedented numbers. They are killing Americans at unprecedented numbers. That's the claim. And in response to this, they have deployed naval vessels, aircraft, all throughout the Caribbean region. Aircraft from Puerto Rico has been deployed. Aircraft and naval craft from South Florida has been deployed. A huge naval buildup in the Caribbean region just outside of Venezuela. And we've gotten a few countries to get on board. Trinidad and Tobago. They allowed a U.S. military convoy to go through there on a flyover. The president came out and said, we're all about it. Guyana. They said, we're good to go here. Move your troops through here. Deploy from here. No big deal. Venezuela warned them. And now Venezuela is making statements about what Trump is claiming. And it is ramping up. Here we go. Here we go. On Monday, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro said he is ready to declare a state of emergency over what he characterizes as American aggression after the U.S. military attacks on those vessels. Smart move. Unlike Trump's emergency situations, Nick, you actually have an emergency situation on your hands. You are treating this properly. This is an emergency for you, Venezuela. Don't forget, the Trump administration has already deemed Nicolas Maduro a drug cartel leader, saying he is the head of Trinidad Aragua, and they have put a $50 million bounty on his head. This threat is not lost on Venezuela. And I'm not out here defending Nicolas Maduro. I'm just telling you the facts of the matter. And I'm giving you a little context on how they see it. In a news conference in Caracas on yesterday, Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez said more than 5 U.S. combat aircraft have been detected flying near the coastline. The planes, he said, were flying at about 35,000 feet and were seen by Venezuela's comprehensive defense systems located near the international airport outside the capital. All right, so they're confirming 5 aircraft flyovers over their capital's airport. He said, quote, "We are watching them. And I want you to know that this does not intimidate us. It does not intimidate the people of Venezuela. The presence of these aircraft flying near our area of influence in the Caribbean Sea, close to the Venezuelan coast, Lopez said, was a provocation, and it is a threat to the security of our nation." I agree with you, Padrino Lopez. I totally agree with you. It is a gigantic threat. It's a gigantic threat. So, the possible outcomes of this are not mutually exclusive. If both the dynamics laid out here come to fruition, one, I'm going to lay out a couple scenarios. One scenario, Trump has already been saying, I'm going to go in to Chicago and other cities in blue states, right? He wants to go into Portland with the armed guard, with the National Guard. He wants to go into Chicago with the National Guard. Already 200 troops are in Portland. And he wants to clean up the crime. Okay, let's play this out in the light of what we just learned from the administration's note to Congress. Let's play this out. The armed guard, the National Guard goes into Chicago. They, for whatever reason, intelligence gathering, reports, whatever, they decide to go to a block in the city known for heavy crime. Let's say that block is controlled by MS-13. MS-13 is a verifiable arm of a cartel in Mexico. That's not, we're not guessing. That's verifiable. MS-13, or it's Nicaragua or somewhere. I'm sorry, or Honduras. I'm sorry. You'll have to check it out. It's not Mexico. It's MS-13 is connected to another actual cartel. Okay? It might be Honduras. I'm not sure. I should have got that. That's on me. You can check it out. So let's say they go into this block controlled by MS-13, which is an arm of an actual cartel, who we are. What's that? El Salvador. Thank you, Scotty. MS-13's bases in El Salvador. Okay? Cartel. Real deal cartel. So this block is controlled by MS-13. They've been running their operations out of this block of apartments, let's say. Running drugs out of there. Whatever other illegal activities they've been doing. Because they're members of a cartel, and Trump, and he did not name which cartels, by the way. This is an important note. In that note to Congress, he didn't just say Tren de Aragua. He didn't name any specific cartels. He just said the cartels. We are at war with the cartels. So he decides to interpret that as, right now, for the purposes of this raid on this block right here in Chicago, that we are at war with MS-13. They are a cartel. We're at war with them. What comes next? Go ahead. Think it. Say it. They go in and they start shooting. And they connect the dots later. Every dead body there, we can link you to some MS-13 member in your building or on your block, communications, hung out with them, did some dirt with them, whatever it may be. If we can just link you to MS-13, you are an enemy combatant. You are a non-state combatant. You die. We're not detaining people anymore. We're not investigating anybody. Not in the cartels. No detaining, no seizures, no investigating, no intelligence gathering. If you're an enemy combatant, you're dead. If you're an MS-13 member in this instance, you're dead. And when we have a pile of bodies and everybody's outraged and the legal challenges arise, go talk to the Supreme Court about it. How's that gone for us? We had the one bright spot. They did not stay Gia Cobb's decision on Lisa Cook's firing. Great. How do you think they'd go here? Are they going to bless Trump's unilateral military action against these cartels? He gave his little note to Congress. He had his little meeting with the Armed Service Committee. Right? His transparency's there. We're at war. We're at war with the cartels. MS-13's a cartel. We get to kill them. We open fire now, and we sort it out later. That's one scenario. What about this one? We decide Venezuela is a cartel. We decide the person running that country is a cartel. We put troops down, and we invade, and we go to war with Venezuela. Maybe that's what that little meeting with the 800 generals and admirals might have been about. I'm telling you, people, get on board with the Department of War. Get on board. You don't like the things we said at this meeting? Leave now. Because those of you who remain, you better be ready to carry out our orders. Every chance Trump gets, he cuts Congress out of the equation. And he has done so here. Do you think Trump will wait for actual congressional approval to go to war with Venezuela, or will he just do it and say, hey, we already put our bounty out on this drug cartel leader. We already struck this leader's boats coming out of their shores. We told you we had intelligence that they were bringing drugs to the United States. We've explained to you that there's 300,000 people dying from these drugs every year. What more explanation do we need? We have to root out this cartel. We're going to put troops down. We're going to invade. We're going to invade Venezuela. And while we're waging war on Venezuela, what happens if the midterm election should come up and we're still at war with Venezuela? You should look into the wartime powers granted to President Trump should that happen. Should we actually be in a war? You think it's bad during a shutdown? You think Russ Vought's bad now? Go check out Trump's wartime powers. What if he decides we can't have any change of leadership in this country right now? We are in an emergency. This is a war. We have troops in Venezuela, and even here at home, we are waging war on these cartels. We're waging war in Los Angeles. We're waging war in Chicago. We're waging war in San Francisco, New York City, Atlanta. We're waging war. We're at war. This is an emergency. We can't afford elections right now. This isn't the time. Too volatile. Am I being hyperbolic? Yes. I recognize that. Am I being completely ridiculous? I know some of you are saying yes. I know the people who may be watching this that are like, all right, Brett, you're going too far. Every now and then you go too far. Every now and then you go too far. I have been accused by those very close to me of having TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome. I've been accused of this. I don't think I'm deranged. I don't think I'm deranged. And I don't think any of this is beyond Trump. I told you 2 days ago, do you think Vaught and Trump and all of his sycophants at the top agencies would go through all this trouble just to hand over power to the Democrats in a year and a half? Does that sound like something they would do? They have reshaped our government as they see fit. The finish line is just over there. I've told you about some of the impediments to what's happening and some of the fights that are being had, but the finish line's right over there. And I also told you that if more than half of the people in this country that vote knowingly for a man who will try to cancel elections and try to take your constitutional rights and try to oppress brown people and ruin our relationship with our international allies, if they know these things and they vote for him anyway, that is what we are. When he cancels votes, Carolyn Levitt will stand up at that, when he cancels elections, Carolyn Levitt will stand up at that podium and say, this is the mandate that the people have handed Trump. And Mike Johnson will say, the American people have given Trump a mandate to protect our country however he sees fit. And Pete Hegseth will stand up there and he will say, President Trump has a mandate to use the military to protect America. That is what they will say to us. You voted him in. You knew who he was. You knew what his agenda was. Even the libtards on the left were telling you about Project 2025 and then showing it to you. And you didn't care. It's not that you didn't listen. You didn't care. For many of you, this is the fruition of your wildest dreams.
Breaking politics, breaking narratives, breaking news. But first, we need a coffee break. Breaking news, breaking rules, breaking through. Back to Brett Breaks Things.
Okay. All right. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down a little bit. I mentioned Pete Hegseth, what he'll be telling you. Well, Pete Hegseth, he is doing his due diligence to create a very specific environment at the Department of War. At the Department of War. Now, we did a story. We did a story about how the press that covers the Pentagon now has to sign an agreement that they will not release any information, classified or unclassified, without specific approval from the Department of War. Everything they report on has to go through the department's spokesman or chief legal counsel and get approved. No more just reporting on even unclassified things. They also eliminated the press offices of every left-wing media outlet, replacing those offices with the offices for Newsmax and OAN and Fox and the Huffington Post and those people. All right? So we talked about that. Well, Pete has taken it a step further. He has taken it a step further. He has released a memo written by Steve Feinberg. He is the Deputy Defense Secretary. He wrote a memo. Okay? All military service members, civilian employees, and contract workers within the Office of the Defense Secretary and the Joint Staff, which is more than 5,000 personnel, by the way, would be required to sign a non-disclosure agreement that prohibits the release of non-public information without the approval or through a defined process. The memo continues. In a separate document attached to this memo, also from Mr. Feinberg, he is establishing a program to randomly polygraph all of those people, all 5,000 of them. Some of them top officials. The language in the document, it doesn't even exclude 4-star generals. Everybody can be polygraphed at any time. Anybody. So, you're signing an NDA saying you will not release any information. And then we're going to come behind you and we're going to hook you up to a polygraph test and ask you, have you released any information? What is this all in an attempt to do? Stop leaking. Well, I'll tell you right now, Pentagon leakers, you are about to literally double or triple the fee you can ask to leak this information. I don't know what you guys are making, but you better up it. You better up it because they're coming after you. We'll still get leaks. We'll still get leaks out of the DOW. We'll still get leaks. But you better up your fee, leakers. You better up your fee because they are coming for you. They're coming for you. And it's funny because Parnell, he's so out in front of this leaking thing. I told you what his comments were right after the military advisory committee, right? They got together. He immediately came out and said, you better not be leaking any of this information to the press. Well, once again, he attacks the press. He's attacking the Washington Post this time. The Post went to him and asked him for comments about what went on here in Feinberg's memo in the document. And he declined to comment. Then this report came out, and he said every word of it's untrue and irresponsible. Just, you're lying. Yeah, you're lying. That's nice and simple, nice and tight. You guys are liars. Now, this guy, Mark Zaid, he is a lawyer that represents whistleblowers. He's got multiple whistleblower clients. And he also represents government officials who have been targeted by this administration. He knows a lot about how this is going to play out. He said, quote, "This seems to be far more directed at ensuring loyalty to the DOW and the Trump administration leadership rather than countering any foreign espionage. There are reasons why individuals are not required to take polygraph tests before, and I would question why now the polygraph and the overbroad NDA is being required other than to intimidate the workforce and ensure tighter control." Yeah, the department's saying, well, we don't want anything sensitive getting out to our foreign adversaries. No, this guy, Mark Zaid says, no. A lot of this is already in place. Much of this is already in place. We already ensure nothing gets out to foreign adversaries. This is to intimidate the 5,000 plus personnel that work at the Pentagon. That is what this is all about. And don't forget, this is in tandem with Pete Hegseth. He put brand new limits on the military's independent service inspector generals and equal opportunity offices. These are the people that, people go to when there's a complaint or something egregious has happened to them. Maybe they've been asked to do something unconstitutional or unlawful, or something unconstitutional or unlawful has happened to them in the military structure or at the Pentagon. That's the office that takes care of it. The Independent Service Inspector General and the Equal Opportunity Office. He fired those people and stopped their operations. He told you at that meeting, he told the generals, there's no more handcuffs. No more handcuffs. No more thinking about the repercussions of your actions when you're training our soldiers or abusing them or sexually abusing them. Don't worry about it. Any avenues they would have to complain about you, we're going to take care of that. And they are. So now we can't leak to the press. We can't complain to anybody. No offices to complain to if something egregious happens to any of them. Sorry. And the press can't even report about unclassified matters. Now, there's one former senior defense official who, like everybody who talks to the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post or the Washington Post or Axios or any of these great, the Atlantic, any of these, they're all anonymous. They have to be. They have to be. Obviously, I don't have to get into why. So one former senior defense official, he had some things to say. He said there may be some good in this. There may be, but he sees it for what it is. He sees it for what it is. The real concern is not about foreign intelligence. It's about tamping down people who they think are leaking to the press. He said these are pucker factor scare tactics. That's what he called them. Pucker factor scare tactics. The overriding theme here is to try and cause as much fear in the workplace as possible, which he says there is some good in this. That's funny. But even he admits this is all redundant. Other than the polygraph test, everything they're kind of detailing in these NDAs have already been covered. If you have contacts with the press, you're supposed to disclose them. If you have a speaking engagement out of the Pentagon, or so you're a Pentagon official and you have a speaking engagement, you're supposed to have your remarks cleared. Whether it's classified or unclassified. Everything you say is supposed to be cleared anyway. Okay, so this is just flat out intimidation. That's all it is. That's all it is. On the heels of that embarrassing address to those generals and admirals, right? He is forming the Department of Defense into something that the president can use most efficiently Department of War, something he can use more efficiently, less leakers, less press access, less access to anybody who would defend people being trampled on by the upper brass. Less of all of it. More war. Less woke. Right? More war. Less woke. That's the idea there. And I mentioned to you, the FBI, DOJ, FCC, FHFA, the BLS, FEMA, Department of Homeland Security, all of them have been weaponized. That's not my opinion. That is fact. And we are seeing the results of their weaponization play out before us. But it's the Department of War and this weaponization, this installment of Pete Hegseth, this is the one we haven't seen really rear its head yet. What you're hearing about in this memo given to these 5,000 Pentagon officials, what you're hearing is the setup, the preparation for whatever the DOW has in store for us, or whatever Trump or the people who are really running the show have in store for us using the DOW. Is it this Venezuelan conflict? Could this be it? Do you think in your heart Trump won't take advantage of the DOW like he has those other agencies I just mentioned? Possibly soon to be the Fed. We'll see. This all happening in the face of a shutdown where Trump is being handed more power. Less information, less access to defense, less access for the press, and we're doing all this facing a shutdown. I am going to go long. I just got a few more things about the shutdown I want to get to, and I hope you stick around. We're going to do some overtime because I want to get to a few things developing with this shutdown. I'm going to keep bringing you shutdown developments. I have to. This one's going to affect you. How much it affects you depends on the bipartisan deal-making faction of the Senate, and the Senate only. Make that clear. They're having another vote today. I told you that John Thune was going to have a vote every day. Today's vote has the Democratic version and the Republican version presented to the floor, to the Senate, and they're going to vote. And it's going to happen exactly like the last four have. 53-47. No deals have been made. Nobody has come across the aisle one way or another. Not yet. I'm going to show you some signs of possible wavering, though, from both sides.
It's time for a quick break, then we break some more. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. Brett Breaks Things, fighting for America one mic drop at a time.
All right, I'm getting my ducks in a row here. Yeah, to hit this final story. You're going to see a happy Brett return Monday because the Bears are off this weekend. We're on bye. So there won't be clinically depressed Brett coming back Monday after a Bear loss. And we're not going to lose anyway. We're certainly not going to lose to the bye week, but we're hot. We're hot like fire. So I'm going to be a happy Brett regardless after this weekend. My fantasy teams look okay too, so I should be happy coming back. Just putting that out there. I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. Football, whatever you do with your weekend, I hope you guys enjoy it. So I'm going to get to a few things about the shutdown right now. I'm going to rapid fire hit some of this stuff. All right, we're in overtime, so I'm just going to hit it. Hit it. Bow. I'm just going to hit it. I like to talk about the pushback, right, to some of this stuff that Trump is doing. I like to talk about the fight, where the fight is being had so we can identify it. We know who's fighting for us, what their strategy is, how successful they may or may not be. In terms of Russ Vought's firings, there is a fight. The fight is on. There is pushback. There is resistance. There are people fighting for us. They're not just fighting for the jobs of these federal workers. They're fighting for us. and trying to put a halt, stem the tide of all of these chaotic tactics by this administration, by this kakistocracy, right? Kakistocracy, Randy brought that up. You love that word. That's what it is. And it is seeping in everything. It is infecting America. It is infecting democracy. It is a disease. And what do the antibodies look like? They look like this. Some federal officials are counseling several agencies right now against the firings that are being proposed by Russ Vought. They're being counseled, don't do it. If you're told to fire people, be careful. Don't do it automatically. Don't do it. It may be violating the appropriations law. Now, everybody who talked here are also anonymous. Of course they are. This is reporting out of the Washington Post once again. I love the Washington Post. Scotty does as well. These firings are called RIFs, or reductions in force. All right, and there are serious legal challenges that they are facing now. The labor unions in particular, they have filed a lawsuit. And in a very clever move, okay, they are pointing to the Anti-Deficiency Act, which prevents the federal government from obligating or expending any money not appropriated by Congress. And how are they applying this? This is very clever. Got to tip your hats to these lawyers, man. Some of them are really good. They're saying that if you fire all these people, you're going to have to give them severance. And severance on that scale is a major government expenditure, therefore violating the Anti-Deficiency Acts, the Anti-Deficiency Act. You can't have government expenditure to this level during a shutdown. That's pretty clever. That's pretty good. Now, the non-Russ Vought firings that are getting ready to take place now, not the ones that he's threatening, the overarching ones from Democratic agencies and agencies that don't uphold Trump's values. Those firings are coming like today or tomorrow, or we'll see very soon. But there are some firings that are scheduled, non-Russ Vought related, RIFs that are kind of commonplace when a shutdown happens. There's about 16,000 of those RIFs. And some in the some federal officials are saying, don't even do that. Don't even do that yet. Hold off. Now, there is pushback on Russ Vaught's version of RIF, or these firings that he's threatening. There is pushback from Republicans and Democrats. Not a ton of Republicans, though. Many Republicans in Congress are leaning into the Russ Vought firings like they are every other Trump policy. Mike Rounds of South Dakota, who is a close friend with John Thune, said that Friday's vote is the last chance for Democrats to avert the layoffs Vought has been threatening. I think we've got to be done by tomorrow or things could go south real quick. So I think really tomorrow's vote is a crucial vote. He's leaning into it. He's using the weapon that Russ and Trump have given him, which is this threat of the firings. And he's saying, hey, Democrats, look what we can't control this guy. Look what Russ is about to do to you. You better come and negotiate. You don't want to be responsible for this. You don't want to be responsible. Now, 750,000 workers have been furloughed already. And that has seriously hampered the Department of Education, Commerce, Labor, and the state departments. We talked about what will stay open: healthcare, Medicare, Medicaid, vets, prisons, military, half the judiciary, just criminal cases, Social Security, and the U.S. Post Office. Those will continue. But the Russ Vought plan is about to be kicked into sixth gear with these firings. J.D. Vance said the firings are an unfortunate necessity. Nice, JD. Nice. Real nice. Way to worry about the American people and these federal workers. It's very compassionate of you. He said, we are going to have to lay some people off if the shutdown continues. We don't like that. We don't necessarily want to do it, but we're going to do what we have to do to keep the American people's essential services continuing to run. He's saying, we got to do this. We got to do this to keep the country running. That's what he's saying. He didn't elaborate on how firing these people would keep everything running. He didn't give us any numbers. He didn't say firing the people will save this much money, which we'll put to here. He didn't say any of that. And please don't forget that firing employees is not a legally required action for the government to take. So if he's telling you we have to do this, know truly that he's lying about that. They do not have to do this. Now, Deborah D'Agostino, she is a lawyer that is representing many of these federal workers. She said regulations governing reduction in workforce say that agencies can dismiss employees for one of several reasons, including a lack of work, a reorganization, or shortage of funds. That these agencies are allowed to do that. She says, but that has never been interpreted to refer to a temporary lapse of funding because of Congress not getting its act together and causing this shutdown. They're two separate things. You can't say that these layoffs are necessary or reorganization when it's solely due to a shutdown that she says we don't know how long it'll last. She speaks to that. And this makes a lot of sense. She says regulations say that employees must be given 60 days of advance notice before being laid off. What if the shutdown ends in 12 days or 12 hours or 3 hours? I just can't see how they tomorrow spit out notices saying you're fired because of no funding and then on Friday say we have funding. How can you justify that? How does that make sense? How do you even apply it? How do you even actually go about doing it? The mess, the chaos. So these unions have moved to block this mass layoff before it has even happened. They have sued the Office of Management and Budget and the Office of Personnel Management. They're sued. They've been sued. They are urging federal courts to block these plans. They're saying the agencies have no statutory authority to implement RIFs during a shutdown and have not provided proper justification. One employment lawyer, Kevin Owens, said the unions have a strong case, but he is far from confident that the courts will actually intervene. So am I. He said, I've stopped trying to predict what the courts will be doing. I know what they should be doing based on the existing case law, but we're not in those times right now. That's right, Kevin, we're not. Because in terms of firing people, what precedent has SCOTUS set? If this gets kicked up, if the federal courts do not stop these firings and the union's case goes to the Supreme Court, how has the Supreme Court ruled in the face of Trump firings? The only one they have stopped so far, and they've only stopped it temporarily till January, is the Lisa Cook firing. That is the only one the Supreme Court stood in the way of. Every other firing he has done has been green stamped, rubber stamped by the Supreme Court. A-OK. All of them, except Lisa Cook. It appears because she's part of the Fed. She's a Fed governor. They are not yet ready to overturn Humphrey's executor v. the United States. That 70, 80-year-old precedent that the Fed is immune. That's January. But all the other firings, they've been greenlit. They're okay. They're okay. So there is a fight. There is a fight. A fight happening against these firings. That's great news. That is great news. That is encouraging. I am encouraged to learn it. I hope you guys are too. It's not all doom and gloom. Not yet. Not yet. The other fight happening right now during this shutdown is the one I've been detailing and the one that is continuing. And that is the ACA fight. And it looks like people within the Trump administration are really, really pushing for something to be negotiated on the ACA subsidies being extended. Now Trump's seeing real pressure on the ACA. There is bipartisan pressure within the Trump administration and within Congress to extend these ACA subsidies. They know. Okay? Now, advisors are worried that the GOP is going to take blame for allowing these subsidies to expire. And they're really worried about the timing of them expiring before the midterms. They're very worried about it. And these White House aides and some officials in the administration, they are actually putting together and discussing actual proposals to extend the subsidies and add it to something they give to the Senate. They are putting the plans together. And according to the reporting out of the Wall Street Journal, Trump has seen some of these plans. And he hasn't put them in the trash can yet. He hasn't made a decision on them. But he's not just getting rid of them. Okay? Trump faced a lot of pressure over the cost of living in the campaign. And it's something that he talked a lot about, the cost of living. He knows how popular Obamacare is in some southern states, in some Trump red states. And people are telling him, if you let their insurance double or take away the subsidies completely for some people, this will fly directly in the face of something that got you elected. Cost of living. It will skyrocket. Skyrocket. The aides know the numbers. They know the numbers. 20 million people would have their premiums raised if these subsidies aren't extended. Of the 75 congressional districts where at least 10% of the population is enrolled in the Affordable Care Act, 62 of those districts are in Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And that's not just me, left wing, throwing numbers at you. That is reporting by the Kaiser Family Foundation, which is a healthcare policy think tank, and this Wall Street Journal reporting. It's backed up. It's verified. That's true. And Republicans in Congress know that's true. They know that's true. They know it. Okay? And they're fighting over it. And they're answering questions about it.
It's important that the American people understand that that group of senior officers and senior enlisted leaders are very well educated.
Whoop, wrong clip. I forgot to change. Wrong clip.
I'm sorry? I was just adding that there are people who came to the country illegally, who got looped in under temporary protection status, who do receive those benefits. And we're going to get into that a little bit deeper in the next. Yes, there are. There are people who have temporary protection status, which makes them, quote, legal. And that's why they're falling under this legal protection, because it was expanded during COVID. And that's, I understand that there's two sides to this argument, but those are the people that are getting argued over right now.
There's not two sides to this argument. The president said Democrats want to give a gold-plated Medicare program for illegal aliens. That's not true. You can only benefit from the Affordable Care Act, Medicare and Medicaid, if you have legal status in this country.
Which was broadly expanded.
We are not fighting for health care for people who are here illegally. That's not true. But we are fighting for health care for Americans.
All right. I understand and appreciate your point on that.
So there it is. That is what the hardline Republicans are saying. We can't, in good faith, negotiate these ACA subsidies when you're giving them to illegals. And Chris Coons is out here arguing with Fox News saying that's not true. And she's saying, well, we just disagree. And he's saying there's nothing to disagree about here. It's not true what you're saying. We're talking about extending the ACA subsidies for Americans who will suffer, the 20 million Americans who will have their premiums go up. She's saying, nope. You Democrats want to give them to illegal aliens. Trump said it. So it's Bible. It's law. Andy Kim got into it. He sees all of this for what it is, this shutdown, the fight over the ACA. He sees it for what it is.
Decisions and efforts to cut back. The Constitution clearly states that it is the legislature that sets the national budget. You know, what Donald Trump is clearly showing is that we do not have currently 3 functioning branches of government. We have one branch trying to dominate the other 2. And we see congressional Republican leaders basically acting as if they are cabinet members in Trump's administration rather than leaders of a separate branch of government.
Yeah. Trying to dominate. Period. Trying to dominate. He went on.
And I heard a lot of Republican senators saying that they're concerned about the ACA prices going up. They're hearing it from their own constituents. So I think they're the ones that are feeling the pressure. There's a reason why Speaker Johnson didn't bring the House into session. It's because he doesn't want the Republican House members to talk about health care because they know they're on the wrong side of this. He knows that a number of his Republican House members actually want to vote for ACA support for their constituents because they know that they're probably going to lose their seat and they're probably going to lose the House chamber in the midterms next year. So there's they absolutely are panicking on the Republican side.
They're panicking. That's what Andy Kim is telling you. They are panicking. Some of them. Some of them aren't. But there is signs of waffling for both sides. There is. There are signs. Both sides are starting to crack a little bit. Okay? Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. Now, he was pointing to the last time, in the last shutdown, things went a little differently. There was more bipartisan debate and agreement. He said last time around, there was none of this kind of activity because there were people inside the White House who put guardrails on him. Now those people are gone, and Trump has people like Russ Vought who's whipping us into a frenzy. And he openly speculated, and this is some of the waffling I'm referring to, he openly speculated about whether the federal workers that he represents, in his state, will eventually ask Democrats to fold. He's saying it might not be the congressmen, the congressional Democrats. It might be the people that they're representing. The federal workers they're representing might ask us to fold. Won't be our fault. They might ask us to. He said, quote, I think we had to bring the fight. It's about health care. But it's spurred on by the fact that there are so many norms and laws that have been broken, and there's so few times that you can actually join the fight. Now, but I'll be the first to admit it. Will they say that if this goes on for 2 or 3 weeks? I don't know. He's saying right now, he's encouraged. But will they be still encouraging him to fight in a few weeks? In a few weeks. Will they still do that? Will they still do that? So there has been waffling, little bending, waffling on the Republican side. Some Republicans are open to a smaller extension and negotiating just the ACA. Some Democrats are saying, give us a small extension, something light. Let's just pass a real quick, cleaner extension, and we'll keep negotiating about the ACA. We'll get something done. They're talking about a year-long extension of the ACA. And the Republicans might be on board with a year-long extension of just the ACA because that will lead up to the 2026 midterms. If they don't make your life hell by getting rid of your subsidies, you might still vote for them. So there's Republicans that are definitely on board with that. And there's people inside Trump's own administration that are writing up proposals to that effect. Hey, Don, you're really going to hurt yourself here. You're going to hurt your Republican senators in their states. You're going to hurt our party. You're going to hurt our party. Please reconsider. And they're writing up proposals. And Don has seen some of these proposals. He's going to make a decision on some of these. He's going to make a decision. Now, there have been dirty tricks and dirty tactics going on during this whole thing. One of the dirty tactics, it's played out much broader than we showed you. We told you that when you went to HUD, when you went to HUD, the website, that partisan message that Democrats are doing this to you, right? We told you that popped up, and then a pop-up popped up over that, reiterating it. That was done by Scott Turner, Trump sycophant, head of HUD, head of Housing and Urban Development. He said it's about informing the American people of the consequences of the radical left's shutdown. This is their decision, and they need to own it. There's been more of it. There's been more of it. When you try to send an email to anyone in the education department, you get one of those automated emails back. I know you guys have dealt with those in the past. They're kind of annoying and impersonal. You go to email somebody you do work with and you get that immediate, hey, I'm in Cabo Wabo and I'm drinking Mai Tais. Sorry, I can't be here. I'm not going to be here for 3 weeks or something like that. Well, when you email somebody in the Department of Education now, you get a similar response, except they used to have their own. It's been replaced without their consent, that automated email response, because they're not there. They're furloughed, right? They're not there. None of them are there. And what do you get when you email somebody in the Department of Education? You get, unfortunately, Democratic senators are blocking passage of H.R. 5371 in the Senate, which has led to a lapse in appropriations. Due to the lapse in appropriations, I am currently in furlough status. I will respond to emails once government functions resume. Well, that's dirty pool, considering they have no idea what the politics of each and every person in the Department of Education may be, or whether that in any way remotely represents how they feel about this. One education department employee, who obviously remained anonymous, obviously, said that they wanted to change the language in that automated message, but stopped short, because they feared that even logging into their system in any way, shape, or form would violate some federal law that might prohibit furloughed employees from working at all. I think they're more afraid of getting dragged away and ended up upside down in some basement like Ide Hussein used to do to his soccer team. Like they're afraid they might get just dragged away, their name put on a list. That employee stopped short. He stopped short. Jamie Raskin spoke to it. He said he has heard from constituents who were outraged by the partisan rhetoric, and said President Trump is free to spout any partisan nonsense he wants from his giant bully pulpit, but he may not coerce federal employees into joining his choir. That's one way to put it. That's definitely one way to put it. That's one way to put it for sure. And of course, the dirty pool, we talked about some of the tactics. You know, putting on social media that he and Russ Vought are going to sit down and attack agencies that the Democrats hold dear. Goaded the Democrats, saying that they are the ones that handed him this unprecedented opportunity, referring to March, when Chuck and a few other Democrats in the Senate went along with their resolution, handing him a whole bunch of powers during the shutdown and powers over the budget. He, of course, had that AI deep fake of Hakeem Jeffries with a big mustache and a sombrero, and then dubbed words over Chuck Schumer. Very insulting. You had Mike Johnson wheeling out a propaganda video in front of a White House tour. I mean, it goes on and on and on. It has escalated so far from where it used to be. And the New York Times did some reporting on this, and they relayed a little story, and it put it kind of in context. And some of you might remember this. When Bill Clinton was facing a shutdown, there was an international trip, a plane trip, and Newt Gingrich was on that plane. He was the other side of the shutdown, representing the Republicans. And they got a little bit of an argument, and Clinton sent him to the back of the airplane. At the time, that was this giant shot across the bow. That was this giant insult, this huge inflammatory action by Bill Clinton. They made such a big deal of it. Out of that. Clinton and Newt Gingrich were supposed to make deals on that plane ride and try to avoid the shutdown, and Bill sent him to the back of the plane. Then the press later called him a crybaby. Gingrich called him a crybaby. And it was an ugly affair, or at least ugly by the standards of the 90s, right? Well, New York Times went and they found Mr. Gingrich. They were curious what he had to say about how this is playing out now. And Newt said some things about the current political climate and some of the tactics Trump is using right now. He said what Trump is doing is unprecedented. He said that Democrats have underestimated the fact that Mr. Trump has people in the government like Russell T. Vought, the White House budget director, who has been planning for years to drastically shrink the government. He continued, Trump is taking apart the world of the left. I mean, this is very methodical, aggressive, cultural and political and economic offensive. He said that the difference in the political dynamics today between Mr. Trump and the Democrats comes down to the fact that Trump has a history of fighting on public platforms that did not exist in the 1990s. And he finished by saying, Clinton and I sat together for 35 days, and the only 4 balanced budgets in the last century came out of our ability to fight in the morning and cooperate in the afternoon. We are so far from that. We are so far from that right now. Dirty tricks, threats, and Russell Vought. You know, it's funny. I did hear from some of you. It was interesting, your reaction. I posed to you a couple things that I wanted to hear back from you on. How do you feel about Pete Hegseth's new philosophical direction for the Department of War? Less accountability, those silly rules of engagement, violence, F around and find out. How do you vets feel about that? How do you vets feel about that? I wanted to know. And I also wanted to know, do you wish we had our own Russell Vought? And you guys got back to me a little bit, and it was mixed. It was mixed. The Russell Vought discussion was mixed. Some of you saying, absolutely, fire with fire, and justifies the means. Let's go get ourselves a Vought and play these dirty games and hurt the Republicans as much as they have hurt the American people. And some have said, no, we have to be better than that. We have to take the high road. Even if the high road ends with defeat after defeat after defeat. But what you weren't really mixed about is the veterans who got back to me. You are all appalled by what Pete Hegseth is doing to the Department of Defense, now the Department of War. You are appalled at what will soon be a complete lack of responsibility and culpability at the top levels of the military. No way to whistleblow or file a complaint or hold them responsible for their actions, no matter how deplorable they may get. You're appalled at that. You are offended by that. It wasn't close. It wasn't close. And you're also offended at this administration's attack on the First Amendment, because many of you expressed to me in no uncertain terms that is exactly the thing that they went and killed for and died for. Free speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion. These were the things they fought for. You are all appalled by Pete Hegseth and Trump and the direction for the Department of Defense, now the Department of War. And I was really heartened by that. I enjoyed reading your responses. Ed, you were particularly eloquent, and I appreciate you reaching out to me, as I always do. Vets, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this? Trump, in an executive order, has declared that in an event of any attack on Qatar, the U.S. would take all lawful and appropriate measures, including diplomatic, economic, and if necessary, military, to defend the interests of the United States and the state of Qatar. We have promised an Article 5-like alliance with Qatar by executive order. This is the guy who has done nothing but deride and criticize NATO, threatened to back out of U.S.'s Article 5-like agreements across the globe. But here you are offering it to Qatar. It gets even better. You see, Trump signed this on the same day that he was hosting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And while he was with Netanyahu, after he signed this executive order protecting Qatar, He made Netanyahu get on the phone and apologize to Qatar officials for the Doha strike. It was a strike on Hamas, but it killed a Qatari security officer. Ben got on the phone and apologized to Qatar for killing their security official in the Doha strikes. How about that? How about that? Man, Trump came through for Qatar. Big time. You think this might have something to do with the $400 million jet that Qatar gave Trump? Or maybe it has to do with the new Trump golf course that Trump is opening in Qatar. Or maybe it's the billions of dollars in military spending Qatar has promised to do in the United States. And or maybe it's the largest U.S. military base in the entire region right there in Qatar. He's offering them a guarantee that he won't even guarantee to our allies. He won't even guarantee to our allies. And by the way, Republicans are not happy about this at all. Republicans are not happy about this. First of all, he went right past Congress to do this. He's just unilaterally saying, if you mess with Qatar, you mess with us. Didn't even approach Congress with this. And there are many Republicans who are very unfavorable towards Qatar. They do not like Qatar. They've spoken about it in the past. Rick Scott, when Trump got the plane, Rick Scott said, I'm not flying on a Qatari plane. They support Hamas. Laura Loomer strongly criticized this deal and said Trump should be focusing on the Muslim Brotherhood instead. Ted Cruz suggested that Qatar is secretly funding Antifa. Republicans have been claiming for years that Qatar has been propagating human rights abuses, and they have pointed out very verifiable links between the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas to Qatar. And Qatar has had gigantic international upheaval in their region. You know, so we are now in an Article 5-like agreement with Qatar. You know, this could get so messy. Israel has struck inside Qatar's borders. And you know who else has bombed inside Qatar's borders? Iran. What if Iran decides to strike Qatar again for whatever reason? And now we've got this Article 5-like agreement with them. Are we now at war with Iran just like that? No congressional approval. Forget you, Supreme Court. We're just doing this. We gave Qatar this agreement. We gave him this agreement. It's an executive order. Trump signed it. Somebody messes with Qatar, they mess with us. What happens when Iran messes with Qatar now? Or any one of their, adversaries in the region, any one of them. They are not without conflict. They have been conflict-laden for the past decade. This could get seriously messy. And the America First Party is pissed. Even Ben Shapiro said, he said the jet was amounted to accepting goodies from people who support Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood and Al Jazeera and the rest. He said this move is not America First. It's not America First. So, you want to know why they need the DOD to be on board with everything that Trump decides, with everything that Pete Hegseth tells them to do? Why we're having meetings trying to consolidate the leadership and the loyalty of our military in one place at one time to let them know this is how this is going to go going forward. You may be asked to put troops in Venezuela. We may ask you to go defend Qatar from Iran. We may ask you anything. You're not going to tell the press. And we're going to make sure you don't tell the press because we're going to give you a lie detector test. The press can't report anything we haven't expressed. And we're going to tighten up. You're not going to have to be worried about the rules of engagement, and you're not going to have to be worried about being brought up on any charges internally. We fired the lawyers. We put handcuffs on the inspector generals. We've dismissed everybody in the offices that you would be complaining to. There will be no complaints. There will be no constraints. And we will be using the Department of Defense and the U.S. military in ways you've never seen before, including possibly going to war with Venezuela or having to defend Qatar in a military conflict. If I haven't pissed the vets off enough, I'm guessing they're getting even more pissed off now. I would love to hear what you think about this. I'd love for any of you to let me know what you think about this. Enjoy your weekend. We'll keep an eye on all of this. Expect those firings to come down the pike. There are objections and legal restraints on this. Expect them to be coming. And I hope you went and took the over on the number of days this shutdown will last. I'll see you guys Monday.